And I want to repeat that. This counts more than any count before. I think we can all agree that with COVID and with all of the challenges that we have experienced as a community, it is more important than ever for us to understand the impact that this pandemic has had on our unsheltered population and friends. And so coming together to ensure that we get this count right is vital. We are fortunate to have a very great, robust team of innovators working together collaboratively on this year's Pit Count. I'm going to introduce you all to our EveryOne Homes lead, Katie Haverly, who will be leading the Pit Count on behalf of EveryOne Home and who will also introduce our partners. And with that, Katie.
Thank you so much, Chelsea, and so happy to have all of you joining us today and taking time out from your busy schedules to connect and convene with us about this important event for our community. I want to take this time to do some introductions so you have a sense of the great planning team that is working behind the scenes to ensure that this count is done well, is thoughtful and comprehensive, and takes in all feedback from our amazing community. So, of course, I will start with our team from EveryOne Home that you may be familiar with. My name is Katie Haverly. I'm the Director of Research and Data Analytics, and I would like to pass it off to my colleague, Katie Martin.
Hello, my name is Katie Barton, and I am the Systems Planning Coordinator here at EveryOne Home, and I will pass it off to Tirza.
Hi, my name is Tirza White. I'm the Senior Director for Performance Improvement and Data Analytics at EveryOne Home. I will pass it to Dorcas.
Hi, I'm Dorcas Chang, Operations Coordinator at EveryOne Home.
Great, thank you, Dorcas. And as you all met Chelsea at the beginning, she is our esteemed Executive Director of EveryOne Home, and happy I'll be here with you today. I'd next like to introduce my amazing partner, Kathy Barco from Aspire Consulting.
Hi, everybody. I'm Kathy Barco with Aspire Consulting and am the project manager for this year's homeless count. Excited to be here with you.
Thank you, Kathy. Would also like to now open the floor for our partners at HCD to introduce themselves.
Riley Wilkerson, I'm with the Housing and Community Development Department, and I've actually worked on every homeless count that we've had in Alameda County, so been for a while, and looking forward to hopefully having a good count in 2022.
Thank you, Riley. Any other folks from your team you'd like to introduce?
You know, I can't see who all is on the call, so if anybody else from HCD, please chime in now.
Okay, next I would like to introduce our partner Applied Survey Research, Peter.
Hi, everyone. My name is Peter Connery, and I'm with Applied Survey Research here in Santa Cruz. And we were participants in the 2017 and 2019 PID counts and have been doing point-in-time count technical assistance and project management for about the last 22 years, and look forward to the challenges and the opportunities we have in 2022.
Thank you, Peter. Anyone else from your team you'd like to introduce today?
No, just me on the call today. Thank you.
Okay, great, thank you. And then finally, I would love to introduce our folks from the Office of Homeless Care and Coordination from Alameda County. If any folks are on the call today, Suzanne or Maria?
Doesn't look like they're on.
Okay, great. So today we have a great agenda to share with you, lots of information that I know many of you are very excited to learn about. So we're going to be sharing some information with you today about upcoming community meetings like this one that will be available for folks to participate in. We're going to be talking about some methodology ideas for the count. We will be describing the different ways to be involved in the point in time count this year. And then also looking at survey, the involvement of the survey that is used for the count and giving a little more information about that, but also having lots of space for questions and discussion about what we present today. And just some housekeeping. Because of the large size of the meeting today, we'd like everyone to be on mute. And please note that this meeting is being recorded for note-taking purposes. If you do have questions, please feel free to place them in the chat, and Katie Martin will be monitoring that. You can also raise your hand and we will make sure that your question is addressed. And then finally, the recording and all of the materials for the session today will be posted on the Everyone Home website. So we will send that link out to everyone that was registered for the meeting today. So to get us started, I wanted to have a moment for all of us to get a sense of the size and scope of the supportive group we have here today. I know normally this would be happening in a space where we would be in a room together and we would all see each other and be making eye contact and really being able to get excited together about this important point in time count. So instead, we are going to do a couple of things to help connect us here today. So I was wondering for just the next minute or two, if folks would be willing to put on their video so we can see each other in the way that we might see each other in a community space, and even hit that arrow button so you can see all 5 screens of all 25 people on each matrix to remind ourselves of the strong community and supportive, connected community we have here to support the needs of our population. Thank you so much for showing up and being here today. The next thing I was wondering is folks who have been involved in a point in time count before, either as a volunteer, a coordinator, or supporter, if you could hit the reactions button and hit a thumbs up so we can get a sense of how many of you have participated in this process before, have been involved. Awesome. Seeing so many thumbs up. Thank you so much. And I hope you all will scroll through and get a sense of who's been involved in this process before. And finally, if you were to say in 1 or 2 words why you are here today, if you would be willing to place that in the chat, we'd like to hear directly from you why you made time to be here in this space with us today. So 1 or 2 words, I'm going to give you a minute to place that in the chat, and then we are actually going to share back with you at the end of the meeting in a word cloud what that looks like, why we're here today. Great, everyone counts. Thank you, Darren. 1 or 2 words from everyone in the chat. Why did you make time to come here today? Why was it important for you to join this meeting and really come and support this effort? Getting involved, supporting Oakland, supporting the effort. It's an important undertaking. Love, worried about our seniors, using data to help with service improvement, advocating to reduce homelessness, to make a difference, equity and accurate data, to learn the scale of the issue. Amazing. I want to thank all of you for taking time out of your busy lives to recognize the value and importance of this count for our community, and for really showing up for your neighbors, your friends, your community members to show that you care. And we will have a great word cloud for you at the end of the meeting regarding this. So thank you so much for all your comments and your thoughts. They're much appreciated. I wanted to briefly share with you, and this will be going out over email today, our upcoming schedule of community meetings for the point in time count. We'll be talking a little bit more about details of these moving forward. But just so folks know, we did speak to the kickoff meeting with city and regional representatives at the all city meeting on Friday, where we did discuss some of the things that we'll be sharing with you today to give the cities an understanding of what's happening. This is our current meeting today. And then in November, we do have 3 meetings slated. The first one being actually the upcoming Monday. We're trying to have these on Mondays from 12 to 2 to be consistent for some folks with scheduling purposes. So Monday, we're going to be going more into depth on the survey development for the pit count, and the community is welcome to participate in that. On Monday, November 8th, we will be discussing the youth count and the specific methodology, approaches, and ideas around that youth count, where we're hoping to get community input, especially from those that work with youth and youth providers. So please mark your calendar for that. That meeting is actually going to be from 2 to 4 that day because of another youth meeting that's happening earlier in the day. But those invites will be going out shortly this week. November 15th, we will be looking at outreach participation and guide recruitment, hoping that our outreach programs would be willing to join us for this important discussion. The community is also welcome. And then moving into December, we will be getting into more specific topics around multiplier and fieldwork training, census tract planning, and again, some more youth count follow-up and preparation meetings. And then finally, you'll see that that point in time count is actually on January 25th. This day has been established, so we can start to all hold this day on our calendar for those that are interested in volunteering, getting the word out about the event. We'll also have another regional coordination meeting and youth count preparation meeting before that in January. But like I said, this will be going out shortly to everyone that received the information for this meeting. So keep an eye out, and you'll be able to RSVP to these community meetings as well. Okay, I am going to stop sharing, and I am going to be turning over the presentation to Kathy Barco and Peter Connor to talk a bit more about the methodology for the count.
All right. That was a lot of button clicking to unmute, get into the presentation full screen. So glad that all of you are here. If my guesses were right, it looked like it was about 40 or 50% of folks that thumbs up that they have been part of an Everyone Counts initiative in past years. We love, love, love the return volunteers and the ongoing commitment and participation of our homeless crisis response system, and also have built our counts every year on bringing more people to volunteer for the count. So this is really fabulous to have all of you here as we move our way through. As Katie said, I am Kathy Barco with Aspire Consulting. And our planning team has been working for the last handful of weeks here to really begin thinking through the planning and implementation pieces of our homeless count to really lead up to this meeting and the ones that Katie mentioned that follow, where we will be engaging in more community-wide planning. That core planning team really is the group that is holding the core pieces of methodology, really being in the weeds about making sure that we're thinking about first and foremost safety in the COVID environment, also making sure that we are complying with all of the HUD directives and requirements so that our count is acceptable in the federal landscape of requirements, and we have met all of those expectations. Really making sure we have the most accurate county-wide census. So many of you shared in your reason for being here today that data is important, and accurate, inclusive, equity-based data really is important to you and in Alameda County. And so really that has been part of the focus of our planning team as well, to make sure that we're thinking through our methodologies and our fieldwork in a way to make sure that we are holding up the most accurate countywide information as we can get that's possible, to inform how we do our business practice around reducing and ending homelessness here in Alameda County. We rely very, very deeply on the input of you all from community meetings like this that provide input and direction for the thoughts of the planning team. And the methodology for this count will be presented to the Continuum of Care Committee on November 16th as we're finalizing those recommendations. Sorry, there we go, technical issues here. As the planning team has been meeting, there are about a dozen values that we have been holding in the forefront of our thinking and planning. We certainly want reliable data, and in order to get reliable data, we have to have a well-coordinated and well-implemented fieldwork that operates consistently across every census tract in the county. Has to be federally compliant, physically safe, and allow us to really better understand the opinions, needs, histories, and profiles of people who are experiencing homelessness, and produce data that allows us to advance the work of reducing and ending homelessness in Alameda County. On the right-hand side, you see number 6 through 11 that are some of our key areas of focus for this particular count in 2022. We certainly want to make sure that those COVID accommodations are at the forefront of our planning, but we are also working on having more city level data for sheltered and unsheltered individuals, making sure that we are centering racial equity in the administration of the fieldwork, in our survey questions, and in our data analyses and data report production, as well as how we are centering racial equity as we're thinking about informing policy. We're rolling out some new technology that we're excited about this year to support our fieldwork, and trying to expedite the production of our reports and having available data sooner than we ever have before. And then the last one feels like it is so important as this bumpy roller coaster of COVID has really shifted our thinking, making sure that we are really nimble and fluid and dynamic and able to have contingency plans that really can navigate whether we're getting a full cadre of volunteers or whether we're working on a skeleton, more scaled back skeleton type crew, just based on the fact that we don't know kind of what the pandemic is going to bring us. So the team has really been working on thinking through what are our contingencies and making sure that we're nimble and fluid in making those type of decisions. We're going to cover a point in time overview, just a broad overview about what the point in time count actually is, and then we will talk more specifically about the 2022 count. For those of you that don't know, the point in time count and survey is a federally mandated requirement by HUD for all communities that get any targeted homeless funding across the country. We are required to produce data about individuals, youth, and families who are experiencing homelessness and provide some accompanying demographic data that goes along with the actual enumeration. It is a snapshot of homelessness, looking at who is homeless at one day in time over the course of a year. We know that more people come into homelessness and out of homelessness over the course of the year, but this count only gives us that little snapshot for a one-day point in time. As Chelsea said, this count counts more than ever before, and I would underscore that. We have been fairly sophisticated in Alameda County about using data, and moving further, the state is using our point in time count data. The feds are looking at point in time count data, really thinking about how to use that to inform program, policy, funding, and system design decisions. And so more attention really on this data set is existing than ever has before. We also use it locally to understand how we are making an impact in homelessness. And so that data is important, not just on those state and federal levels, but all of those planning decisions that are made locally often also involve point in time count data. You will hear the name used interchangeably. Point in time count, sometimes that gets shortened to be a PIT count, but locally we have referred to this effort as Everyone Counts. And knowing that we want to make sure that we are including and counting everyone who is experiencing the crisis of homelessness so that we have an accurate sense of the scale and can use that to advocate for funding and policy changes to reduce that impact. The requirement is that the count would happen every other year during the last 10 days in January. And then the data is generally due to HUD sometime between March and May. Because of the surge of the pandemic last year, HUD did allow communities to opt out of the 2021 count. And Alameda County, as such, did not conduct a count in 2021, which is why we're doing it again in 2022. Most of the other Bay Area counties, as well as communities across the country, all similarly opted to not conduct a 2021 count. The scope for who we are including in this count is very, very specific and very narrow. We are looking at people who are experiencing sheltered and unsheltered homelessness. The federal definition of that allows us to include people that are sleeping out on the streets, in tents, makeshift shelters, vehicles, abandoned buildings, on bus or BART, and in all of those sheltered locations that you see there, emergency shelters, DV shelters, our community cabins and transitional housing programs, as well as our safe parking and seasonal shelters or weather inclement shelters. It does not allow us to count, however, people who are staying place to place, even if on the night of the count they happened to be indoors, but otherwise have been sleeping out on the street. They are not included in this point in time count. So almost as important as who is included is who is not included, including those people that are staying in doubled up or overcrowded conditions, people who are temporarily in rehab or mental health facilities, in jail, in prison, or even those who are at risk of homelessness because of a pending eviction or foreclosure. There are 3 core components of our count. The sheltered count takes place the evening of the 24th this year and creates an enumeration and all of the demographic data for people that are staying in a temporary sheltered location. This would include all emergency shelters, all transitional housing programs, all of our DV shelters, all of our winter shelters, even motel vouchers that are paid for by a program, all count in this sheltered count. The visual count is oftentimes what people refer to when they talk about going out and volunteering for the count. We go out in the early morning hours of January 25th and send out teams to cover the entire county area and do a visual count of who we see who is experiencing unsheltered homelessness. In addition to that, there is a separate piece of work that we do for our youth count that targets young adults in the ages of 18 to 25, as well as unaccompanied minors. So folks who are under the age of 18, but not companioned with their family members. And then the last component happens after that visual count, where in the 2 weeks that follow the visual count, we go out and do a random sampling of people who are both sheltered and unsheltered, asking them a survey set of questions that helps us prepare the demographic information, as well as some of our community planning questions to give us a robust data set. This infographic shows some of the pieces of the pre-work and some of the details about those 3 components. There is a lot of work that is done on the front end to really ensure that our data quality and reliability are high. That include work on the housing inventory chart, working on our youth count and our survey questions, and going out and administering some pre-sampling to look at our unsheltered structures and get an accurate sense of how many people are in some of those unstructured or unsheltered structures, such as vehicles and RVs. Flowing from those pre-count work, the shelter count, what I want to mention that hasn't been mentioned before about that is that that is led by our HMIS staff. It is an annual requirement. So Patrick and his team will be the core contacts for that sheltered count piece. And then the survey happens in addition to that. And again, whether or not your program uses HMIS, if you operate a temporary sheltering program, we will be asking for you to participate in this count on the sheltered component. In the visual count, on a very high level, teams of 2 to 3 people cover every census tract. We rely on guides, people with lived experience who come out and round out our volunteer teams and give that essential aspect of making sure that our count is accurate. We have a continual quality improvement process really each time. And so year after year, we look at what can we do to do a better job on the efficiency of the count and on the user experience for our volunteers. And then as you'll hear a little bit more about later, the survey count, we do somewhere between 1,200 and 1,500 surveys total to a dispersion of sheltered and unsheltered individuals across the entire county. To do those surveys for the unsheltered portion, we rely on peer surveyors who get paid for their work in the count. And we rely on our sheltered staff to help us with administering those shelter surveys to folks who are temporarily indoors on that night of the count. And then from all of that, that's what helps us pull together all of the demographic information, age, gender, race, ethnicity, household types, living situations, and to be able to really have a detailed understanding of our current homeless population for January 25th. The sheltered count pieces will be kicking off in a few months. We manage that one a little bit closer to the time period of the count. And Katie will be working in partnership with myself and with Patrick or other HMIS staff designees to really lead that section of the sheltered count. The context for 2022, however, is very different than how we have operated historically doing this count process in 2017 and 19, and then in prior years from 2013 to 2017 when we had a different methodology that we were utilizing. We really know and understand that part of the experience that we are working with right now really is this very dynamic nature of the pandemic. It feels like we are coming out, but we also know winter months are upon us, holiday gatherings are upon us, and so we're trying to really understand and keep in mind that that situation may be changing. We know that it is just a time where staff and our people experiencing homelessness as well are just fatigued and overstretched. And so we have a lot of enthusiasm and also know that people are dealing with a lot as we're going into this count. We will be working with our public health officers to make sure that our guide and volunteer participation is compliant with all of the public health criteria. And so we are working closely with Healthcare Services Agency, which is why the Office of Homeless Care and Coordination was noted by Katie at the beginning as one of our key planning partners. At the same time we're managing those realities, we also know there is incredible enthusiasm right now for the count, gauged on this participation here, as many people have signed up already. There is a lot of desire for current data, and we get lots of requests for that. And so we know that is one of the pressures that we are experiencing, is really a push to get data collected and back out into community as quickly as possible, while at the same time we're hoping that some of our technology efforts can support a faster turnaround of data. So that's a little bit of some of the pieces that we think are part of that context. I would like to invite our lead from Applied Survey Research, Peter Connery, to share a little bit about some of our initial thoughts that we are working on now about what this work is going to look like in 2022.
Okay, thank you, Kathy. And I guess you can advance the slides for us. That would be fine. So as Kathy mentioned, while there's a tremendous amount of enthusiasm and interest in the 2022 count, one of the real facts we have to deal with in the planning is the uncertainty of the environment we're going to work in, and how many folks are going to be able to participate and do everything that they want to do to help in the count. So one of the things that you experienced in 2017 and 2019 was a large organizational effort with routes being dispatched from regional centers throughout the county. And one of the key planning goals that we're trying to avoid this year is big congregant events to minimize the potential risks of close contact. So we're looking to give a little acknowledgement to that. So in 2019 and before, what you would have seen was multiple pit day sites. Cornerstone of our methodology, we had 164 participate. 2019, just under 500 volunteers were paired with those guides. We covered 360 census tracts. Teams were put together primarily on point in time count day, generally 4-hour routes, 2 to 3 person teams, and each team responsible for 2 to 3 census tracts. And we used paper tally sheets in that effort. So in 2022, as I mentioned, we think things will be very different. And we, as mentioned earlier, we don't foresee having large pit day team creation sites and deployment locations, if you will, and instead are trying to manage and organize with virtual team creation and team management on the day of the count. So another major difference is, because we're not going to have those congregant pit day centers, we are going to work with integrating the guides, or as some of you may refer to them as navigators, have them be managed through the integration of outreach teams and direct service providers who are working with these folks experiencing homelessness every single day. And so that's the outreach teams and direct service providers will be the conduit, if you will, for guide integration in all of our field teams that we put together, whether those be volunteer or otherwise. To achieve that, it's going to be really critical for those of you who worked in jurisdictions to get the support of those outreach organizations. Fortunately, through HEAP and CASH, there's been an increase in funding for many outreach programs, from public health orientation to just general services. So we want to make sure we integrate those experts in the outreach world on our teams. We unfortunately, though we've shown some initial positive support and interest, we're a little uncertain about the number of volunteers who will participate. So we're planning that we may have less than optimal, but we think that we can certainly make that up with a more robust service agency and outreach team participation. We feel the lived experience participation of the guides and navigators is super critical, but want to maintain safety precautions for all involved, and work through the lived experience participation through outreach team and a direct service provider infrastructure. We're hoping, as in the past, the point in time count is seen as a big community event, and even in the virtual organization that we have to do, we want to infuse that spirit throughout our planning and get as much participation as we can, and keep everyone informed about what evolutions we have from a public safety perspective and from a logistics perspective. And one of the things that we certainly are dealing with right now is we're building the ship here a little bit with all of the uncertainty and public health cautions that we have to manage. So we hope for your patience in some of that, but our entire team is committed to that timely communication.
There's a couple of key pieces I just want to hone in on from Peter's comments. Thank you, Peter. Alameda County has always been kind of all in on homeless count. It's just kind of who we are and what we do. So this, in the second bullet where you see kind of outreach teams and direct service provider participation is essential. That is going to continue. That has always been the focal point of our counts. Starting with those and building out, and that will continue to be true even more so in this particular count. And then as we talk about safety, I want to make sure that we're also clear about what we're including in that in terms of protecting health and safety. We want to make sure that every single one of you, every single one of the staff and colleagues that you work with, everyone here on the phone, all of our volunteers are safe as well. But we also want to make sure that to the greatest degree possible, we are keeping our encampments and our shelter programs, where people live who have very fragile health, who have experienced systemic injustices and racism and have real consequences of those, that this effort is also preserving health and safety for people who are currently experiencing homelessness. So it is both about the transmission among all of our volunteers, but also making sure that somehow we are not contributing to transmitting it back and then having it spread in shelters, in encampments, among people living outdoors, and really making sure that this count and effort helps to protect those with health vulnerabilities, especially those who are experiencing homelessness. So those are some of the key pieces that we are holding and are predicting as we're making our way through our planning. what you can experience if you are going to sign up to be a volunteer. We will be opening up those recruitment links in mid-November, and you'll have a formal place where you can sign up to say, yes, I am participating in the count. And then in December and January, there will be training, online training that you can watch that help orient you to what your roles are and how to use the new technology apps that are there. And then on the day of, we will be assigning teams of 2 or 3 people. In many instances, these will be people that are in your pod. We'd love to encourage you to invite people who are in your social network or in your bubble or in your pod to sign up with you. And you'll be able to sign up your whole team, and then your whole team can go out together and cover 1 or 1+ census tracts and do that count work. At the end of the day, we need to cover all 360 census tracts in Alameda County. We will be asking some of our outreach teams to cover some special outreach assignments for unique areas, either those that are perhaps dangerous, maybe they're up under the freeways, maybe they're very well hidden and our outreach staff know exactly where they are. Maybe there's other reasons that they are special assignment, but we'll be asking our outreach teams to help us covering some of those special assignment tracks. And then on the morning of, our guides, our outreach teams, our program staff, city staff, all of our volunteers will depart mostly from their home or meet within their pre-assigned census tract. As Peter mentioned, we are not doing a central gathering any longer because we don't want to be bringing 200 people together in a closed-in building. And so deployment will look different this year. Once your team gathers, there will be an online sign-in that happens. You'll also have access to that to your tally sheet, and we'll do some initial screening to make sure that everybody is COVID symptom-free and hasn't been exposed recently. That will be a core part of what happens that morning to make sure that everybody is healthy the morning of the field work as well. And then your team will review the safety protocol reminders and plan your route and then head out. All of that will be happening in the very early morning hours. We will have potentially some limited deployment centers for paper-based supplies and PPE if needed. And then the teams will go out into the field, make their way methodically through the census tract to make sure that they're covering all of those areas, either on foot. Some areas will be covered visually in a vehicle. Others will be, park the car, let's get out and explore around this area a little bit more, marking all of the counts that you do in the smartphone app. And then once the route is completely traversed and the team is confident that they have covered all of the areas within their census tract assigned to them, they will check back in on the app or return to the few deployment centers and wrap up. All of that happens in the span of about 4 to 5 hours, as we said, in the early morning, so that we can find people in their sleeping places before they get up and start moving around too much. So that's an overview of the visual count. I want to also recap some of the improvements and new features you can expect to see in this year's count. First is very specifically related to those COVID accommodations. We are still working on getting approval from our county health officials to be able to have that in hand before we have more information available to you in our volunteer information. We will also continue to keep in close contact with those county health officials throughout the process so that we can make sure that the count is compliant with all of the latest health orders. We will be encouraging teams to be created from your existing social bubbles or social pods. So you can think now about who it is you would like to enlist, which coworker, which family member. We do require that volunteers be age 18 or older. And so think about that and plan for a fun, bright and early morning going out on January 25th. As always, we'll continue to build on our outreach teams and staff of our shelters, drop-in centers, all of our other homeless serving programs. We will be beginning some of that outreach and communication over the next 2 weeks to really begin to gauge what level of participation we have. And we will be starting that with our outreach teams. As much as possible, we would love literally every single outreach team to be participating in the homeless count and essentially giving us all of your staff for the morning of January 25th so that we can make sure that we are covering all of those census tracts and getting the most accurate data and information possible. We are also interested in not just having some of our more formal city-funded programs or other HUD-funded programs participating in the outreach side of it. We also want to think about how to engage in faith-based programs, all of the more informal outreach that happens, health-based outreach teams. All of those are who we're talking about when we're talking about building on the work of our outreach teams. So very broad outreach base that is serving people who are experiencing homelessness is who I am referring to when we think about outreach teams that we want engaged for the count. As much as possible, we will be working toward virtual deployments so that folks are not coming into a site-based facility. And with the existing social pods, you could potentially even just volunteer right in your own home neighborhood and start and cover that census tract. So we're really thinking creatively about how to use those existing social pods with the virtual deployment to have a fun experience for you as you're out in covering those census tracts. We will have electronic tools that we are using both for the sign-up process, but also for census tracts, for your tally sheets, so to speak. Peter said we had paper tally sheets. There'll now be an electronic app for the tally sheet and for some of our pre-work that we're doing, going out and sampling those unsheltered structures for counts and household sizes. All of those will be using electronic tools. Another new feature that we are rolling out this year is really relying on some city and regional coordinators to help us make sure that we are operating in ways that are very responsive to the natural dynamics in those communities. Everyone home, staff, Peter, myself, we're not as tuned in as what's happening on the ground as the outreach teams and as some of the city staff or even other nonprofit providers are. So we are going to be having coordinators for each city and or region that would help us map out track assignments, designate what needs to be a special outreach area that's covered by an outreach team. Will also help with some of program recruitment, guide recruitment, and volunteer participation. So that recruitment for coordinators has begun. We've reached out and asked some of our city partners and also designating and having conversation about what types of community-based programs and which community-based programs could help with some of those roles. We'll also continue to have survey coordinators that are stationed throughout our county where our peer surveyors can go check in, turn in their surveys, collect more surveys and more thank you gifts for our people who participate in the survey, but really looking for community support and involvement in being those survey coordinators as well. And then just the other areas of improvement or focus for this year really is around race and equity, expanding some jurisdictional data. So we have more city and jurisdiction specific information that we are looking at making some improvements to our field work for unsheltered families and for youth, and having more of that information available sooner, knowing how critical it is for you all. So that is the overview of where we are at on our methodology planning. As I mentioned previously, it will go to the COC committee on November 16th, and we will be having more printed information about that available for you as well in the very near future. As I said, recruitment will begin in November for our volunteers, and we will start reaching out even sooner than that for outreach and program participation. That's all I have, Katie.
Great. Any questions folks wanted to bring forth at this time? I know we've been answering a few in the chat here. But any outstanding questions on Kathy and Peter's presentation before we move forward? I want to make sure folks understand or get their questions addressed.
And I want to circle back into the great question from Livermore. Yes, the goal is to have everybody signed up, assigned to specific census tracts, have all of their information before the morning of the physical count, so that in the morning you're just heading out with your people, with your supplies, and jumping right into the work.
And Angelica, we see your question. Peter, do you want to talk a little bit more about what the technology is going to be like, how folks actually sign up for their track? Oh, you're on mute, Peter.
Sorry about that. Yeah, the process right now, it's a little premature for us to have people sign up for their tracks, because the first step for us is to work with the outreach teams and to identify the high density locations where we want our most experienced personnel to enumerate with their guides. So once we have all the meetings with those outreach participants and service organization participants, the tracks that are unassigned after that process will be available for the general public volunteers to request to cover. So that process will, once that's done, there'll be an opportunity to go online and look at a map of all of Alameda County, and you'll be able to see which census tracts are available and have an opportunity to sign your team up to cover that. And then once we review that request, you'll be sent an acknowledgement that tract or tracts has been approved for your team, and then you'll automatically receive an email with a copy of the census tract map that you've been assigned, and you can review that in greater detail at your leisure.
Great, thank you, Peter. We have a question for Laura about the job description for the city coordinators. Yes, we do have that. And Kathy, is that something you can share in the chat, or we can send out if you have that available?
Certainly, I will add it to the chat.
Great. And related to your question, Doug, what if any requirements will there be for COVID vaccination and or testing in advance? Like Kathy had shared this. Kathy, do you want to take this one?
Sure, happy to. The answer is we do not definitively know yet. That's the answer, Doug. We have had a lot of discussion among our planning team about what that would look like. Certainly, we want everyone to be safe, and we are examining what we can require of volunteers regarding their vaccination status, and whether that would be self-certification or whether we would be asking them to upload their vaccination card or other proof of vaccination. We have not discussed testing in advance. We will be doing, at least our plan right now is to be asking some COVID symptom questions the morning of the count, so that anybody who is volunteering will be asked, are they experiencing any of these COVID symptoms? Have they been around someone that has tested positive or is experiencing any of those COVID symptoms? And to then have people not volunteer if they have recently been exposed or are experiencing symptoms. That is our current thinking. We are, as I said, working with the health department to get those narrowed down in writing. Currently, the health department has other very stringent requirements for their employees that are out doing street-based work, including requirements to keep your windows rolled down. And if there are people having one person sit in the front seat, one person sit in the back seat. And so we know that those COVID requirements will continue to be fluid as the county health mandates shift. And we are working on narrowing in on a set of requirements for our volunteers that everybody feels comfortable with, helps keep everybody safe, and is signed off on by the public health department. So I can say that concern about all of our volunteers' health is at the top of our concern from all of the planning members, that we're all unified around that and are working to hopefully get approval as soon as we can from the health department to have a written policy that we can share with you. Once we do have that written policy, it will be utilized as part of our recruitment efforts and part of the sign-up processes. We expect that will be on Everyone Home's website, probably also on the county website. Kind of anywhere you hear about the count, you can expect that you will hear about the requirements for COVID vaccination or COVID symptom management to make sure that we're keeping everybody safe as well.
Great, thank you, Kathy. I see your question here, Darren. Will questions related to developmental disabilities be asked in the 2022 count? Great question. I actually invite you to our community meeting around the survey data collection that's happening next Monday, November 1st, from 12 to 2. And Dorcas, could you actually put that link in the chat right now for the November meeting? This link will allow you to register for this meeting where we'll be discussing exactly that. What are our priorities for questions that we do want to be asking to learn more about our population? So thank you, Darren, so much for that question. And then, Whale, I see your question, do I have to live in Alameda County to volunteer for the count? I would think not. Go for it. We would love all volunteers from everywhere, so please join us. And yes, all the slides today will be posted. And then in terms of volunteering today, we do not have the official sign up link created yet, but what we do have is a space on the Everyone Home website where you can give us your information. We're tracking all of the contacts of folks that want to volunteer. So Dorcas, if you could also put that link in the chat right now for our Everyone Home /connect. There's a place to sign up to volunteer for the kid count there. I welcome everyone here today to visit that before you leave the meeting today, because right now we already have 125 folks who have contacted us this way. It's a great way for us to make sure that we're capturing all those that are interested now as we build out these other pieces. Let's see. I see your question, Deborah. Since school be while people are asleep, I'm curious how we will be able to determine how many people are inhabiting a tent. That's a great question. I want to kick that to Peter and Kathy.
Yeah, I can cover that. for Deborah and everyone. Yeah, this is something where when we go out in the field, we won't be knocking on doors or tents to determine who's inside. We will require that there be some evidence that the structure or place is occupied to be included in the point in time count. But the enumerators will only be asked to note what type of accommodation place there is, whether it be a tent, a vehicle, or some other covered structure. And then we have, you may have seen in the calendar of events, discussions of multipliers. And that's some pre-work that we do where we query residents of those structures as to how many persons typically would sleep in a tent. And we come up with an average. And then for all those situations where there's an occupied place that's noted without knowledge of how many people are inside, we will then apply that multiplier, that survey average to that place observation. And that will be included in our overall count. I think, for example, and I don't remember the exact number, but a tent had an average of maybe 1.6 persons in the 2019 count, or somewhere close to that. And we'll have fresh numbers for 2022.
We will also cover in the training the information for our volunteers to be able to determine whether or not to include a tent or a vehicle or an RV to account for what Peter said, evidence that someone is residing in those particular structures. So the training will help also educate and train our folks to make sure that we're implementing that consistently and that people have understanding of protocols to use in making those decisions.
Great, thank you, Kathy and Peter. We see your question, Daniel. Will you provide any materials to help with recruiting other volunteers? Absolutely. Many of these are in development right now, and we also are waiting for the kind of final link to be developed around so that people can actually sign up with that link for the registration process. But again, in the meantime, you can easily share our everyonehome.org/connect website web link where folks can be directed to sign up. But we will be distributing materials and other great looking, exciting tools to help get folks interested. So keep an eye out for those. And then we see your question, Deborah, are there steps being taken to ensure that counts will cover the rural areas of the county surrounding the cities? And as you know, we are covering every census tract as part of this count. So there will be no areas uncounted or uncovered by volunteers, and the trainings will cover how to accurately cover an entire census tract. But Kathy or Peter, if you have anything to add there, please jump in.
Yes, all 739 square miles, all 360 census tracts will be covered. And that is part of the work that we will be doing over the coming weeks to really understand in any given city or region, where are some of those areas that need some special attention from a counting team. And that may be some of the rural areas. For example, I know in Fremont, Niles, down by the river, and out in Livermore, they're also very, very rural. And so we'll be working to help assign the right level of outreach teams and or guides to help make sure that we are matching the census tract's needs with the right skill level of our volunteers to be able to make sure that we're getting the best count possible in some of those rural areas.
Great, thanks, Kathy. I see your question here, Sabrina. How do we get our sign up for guides again? We actually will be having a community meeting about guide recruitment, and I'll share that information again with folks so you can see when that is. But because, and I don't know if Peter and Kathy want to to talk about maybe the timeline for this in terms of when we would have materials or information to sign up guides, what that might look like?
Yeah, right now, the guide sign up process will really be organized through the outreach and service organization infrastructure. So I don't know, Lauren, if you're part of that community or not, but that's our current plan. And we'll be asking them to recruit guides to support those efforts and potentially have some guide recruitment that may be available to volunteers that wish to have that. There's a subsequent question about intentionality, about diversity within that recruitment effort, and the short answer is yes. We will work with our outreach and provider staff to be intentional about that recruitment. And historically, I think anyone who's participated in the guide work will probably have seen that we've been pretty successful with strong diversity in all our guide recruitment historically.
Great, thanks, Peter. Any other questions at this time that we can answer for you about the methodology here? Okay, I'm going to move us forward. Not seeing any other questions in the chat there. Okay, so we've talked about a lot of different things today already, and lots of new ideas and shifts to how this count will be conducted. And so I wanted to just take another moment to share some ideas about how all of you can become involved and what, give folks a chance to think about what might be the best ways that you could help contribute to the success of this count. And again, just want to reiterate that this is an all hands on deck experience where we are looking to all of our experts in the field to help support this effort. And there's lots of different ways to do that. So of course, the first way is to volunteer for the count, volunteer to actually go out the day of the count and to do the unsheltered count. It is the 25th, Francisco, it's January 25th this year. And actually, Dorcas, let's push the link one more time in the chat to go ahead and sign up to volunteer. Very easy to do on our EveryOne Home website. And then once the recruitment system is set up, we will be emailing everyone that has signed up to volunteer so that you can move through the official sign up process and select your tracks and all of the great things that Peter has shared with us today. For those that work with individuals or know individuals that will be excellent guides or navigators for the account, if you would help support the recruitment of those guides in this process, that would be another great way to be able to contribute. If you would be willing to attend community meetings like this one and share your ideas and questions and concerns so that our planning team can really hear from the community about your needs and about the ideas and thoughts you have on how to make this count succeed and work well for the community. We want to hear those things. You could also donate thank you gifts to help support volunteers and guides or organizations, or help support volunteers. That is always helpful. Those that are interviewed and surveyed as part of this count, oftentimes they are usually given a gift of some sort to thank them for taking the time. And they can be different things over the years. Sometimes they have been socks or other types of gift cards, but if there are donations that your organization would like to make towards that effort, that is a great way to connect on this effort. You can also provide a location for volunteers to gather the day of the count, although again, we are not going to be having these larger deployment centers. There may be a need to gather and bring people together in spaces or to hand out gifts and surveys during the survey data collection. So that may be a need. Also, if you are an organization that has individuals that would like to be involved with the count, if you would be willing to let them have that day or that at least that morning off to participate, that is a huge benefit to this count. to make it easy for folks to be able to join us. So something to think about there. So thinking more specifically about who you are and where you're coming from, how you can be involved. For cities, we spoke about this earlier, the city regional point in time count coordinators is a role we see this year as being very important. Having this individual be a person who is very familiar with the regional landscape of service providers or other community partners, working with unsheltered individuals to really help the planning team with planning around this, the targeted recruitment, understanding the real qualities and characteristics of these different census tracts throughout the county, and really helping to do pretty intensive planning in the months of November and December leading up to the count. And again, we have that in the chat. Kathy has posted that description. If you are interested in being that representative for your city, please let us know. We had a great response on Friday at the all-city meeting from cities saying, yes, here's this person willing to step forward and play that role. So we would love to be able to secure that commitment from every city. Outreach programs, as has been mentioned numerous times, are truly critical to the success of this count, especially in the higher density areas where these outreach teams are familiar with these communities and the individuals living there. So commitment from outreach teams is something we were hoping to prod a little bit today for anyone who might be on the call today that is part of an outreach team or outreach program. If you would be willing to say, yes, I commit our team and our staff to this count today, if you would be willing to put your organizational name, email, and name in the chat, we will love to connect with you to help bring you into this process to ensure that your outreach team is in the loop on planning and help ensure that your staff are able to participate. So call to action for all the outreach teams and street outreach teams out there on the call. If you're willing to make that commitment today, please let us know in the chat. For those that are other types of homeless serving programs, again, if you can encourage and allow staff to help with this count, your staff are critical to the success of this effort because they work with and understand these communities and populations. Their expertise is so needed navigating the communities where we need to accurately count unsheltered folks. So encouraging and recruiting their participation would be so appreciated. And temporary housing programs will be participating in the sheltered count, so folks know. Thank you, Sharon. Appreciate it. Very much appreciate it. And thank you, Grant. And thank you, Kaya, for all getting out there and letting us know you'd be willing to participate. And if you're a community member that cares about this issue and you want to know how to get involved, you are just as important to help us cover all of these census tracts in the county. There is such a high need for volunteers for this effort. Like Peter said, we need about 500 folks to accurately cover all of the areas of the county. So if you are interested in volunteering, Dorcas, please go ahead and put that link again in the chat, everyonehome.org/connect, and we will be keeping you in the loop on how to stay involved. Again, like Kathy said, signing up in pods and groups is going to promote safety and make it easier for folks, and you will actually be able to pick your census tract ahead of time, so you will know well in advance where you will be working that day. Okay. One more thing I wanted to share with folks. We've talked a little bit about the survey for the point in time count today and the importance of it. So again, in addition to that observational count, about 10% of those that are unsheltered and sheltered have the opportunity to have a conversation with someone about a number of questions that are included in this survey. There are many topics in the survey that are HUD required. And then there's space for some questions that are not HUD required that can be community priorities. So in order to not overburden the person that we are taking the time to ask all these questions of, we have to be mindful of the length of this survey. So we need to really prioritize as a community those topic areas of most importance to us to best take advantage of this moment to really learn from this individual with lived expertise what it is that we would like to know. So I really highly encourage any of you interested in weighing in on those topics to join us on Monday, November 1st from 12 to 2. And Dorcas, can you place that? Perfect. Thank you, Dorcas. That link is in the chat currently. If you'd like to RSVP to the community meeting on survey development, we would love to have your input there. And in the meantime, we pose a challenge to you for those interested to start thinking about what do you think would be important to see in the survey for system planning? What are those questions that could help us move towards actionable steps to end homelessness in Alameda County? So hope that gets the brain juices going so that we can have a really great discussion on Monday. Again, here is the link to stay connected for all of the wonderful things that we shared with you today and the different ways to be involved. And again, we would like to open the floor for questions. And I think there have been a few in the chat that we may have missed here. Okay, great. And thanks so much to all of the programs here that are willingly stepping forward to volunteer staff and time. But wanted to open the floor to questions to the entire group at this point. No questions. Wow. That's a good sign, maybe, or a bad sign, not sure, but I'm glad to know that everyone feels like there's clarity around what was presented today. And then I would like to take a moment, if you're ready, Dorcas, to go ahead. We wanted to take all the words that were shared with us from the beginning so that you can see why we're all here together today. And in the word clouds, the larger words represent those words that were mentioned the most. But as you can see here, we all come together for a variety of really important and wide range of values that we all share around this point in time count for homelessness. So wanted to just let you all witness this and see the values that we carry. And really want to thank you again for taking time out today to be here with us today. I hope you can be here at our subsequent community meetings and stay involved in this process with us. And Danielle, I see your question here. Other than volunteering on the day of the count and recruiting friends, are there other ways that lay community members, not members of organizations, can be helpful beforehand? I think the recruitment piece is huge. And we will be sharing materials to make that easy on you, but the recruiting, I think, is the thing that we really are asking our community members to help out with because of the large number of folks we need to bring to the table. Again, if you know or have thoughts on donations to bring forth to the table for those that are participating and those that are completing the surveys, that's also very helpful. And I want to share one more time the community meeting schedule that I mentioned earlier, just to remind folks again what's upcoming. So let me get back to that. Oops. Again, we have our survey development meeting on Monday the 1st. The youth count planning meeting is the following Monday on the 8th from 2 to 4. And then the 15th, the outreach participation and guide recruitment. Sabrina, you may want to join this if you're interested in the guides recruitment. And then future meetings looking at multiplier field work, census tract planning, and then our future youth count meetings. But these 3 meetings in November are coming hot and heavy the next 3 Mondays in November. So we hope to see you there.
Katie, can I add just a couple of targeted pieces to that?
Yes, please.
So survey development, as it says, is a subcaption of there. Anybody that's interested in learning more about what questions we ask on the survey that help us get at the HUD required data and demographics field, and helping to give some input to the limited number of community questions that we can add to that. You're more than welcome. We really would love to have you there on the 1st. The youth planning, I'm making a special shout out right now to all of the youth providers. We, unlike other parts of our methodology where we're really kind of taking a piece of work recommended by ASR and our partners and really rolling out some best practices, the youth count is a place that every year we really try to improve even more on there. And it's a place that there aren't a lot of national best practices about what works really well on the youth count side. For this definition of youth who are literally unsheltered the night of the count, it becomes hard to really find those youth. So really come one and all youth providers. Katie will be sending this out, but please invite other youth providers. This is a special invitation to all youth providers to come and be part of that youth planning that will happen kicking off in November, but then continuing also in December and into January. We specifically recruit youth guides and youth surveyors also as a part of that, knowing that representation really does matter. So the planning will cover both what are the parts of the methodology we would like input and co-creating from youth providers on, and it will also lead into the recruitment piece as we're working on getting participation from youth serving agencies and participation from our youth in those roles as guides. And then the meeting following that one is an invitation for all of those outreach programs to please come and be a part of that. So we'll be doing some outreach. Everyone Home will be doing some outreach. But if you could also make sure to circulate that flyer and invite anybody you know, particularly in those youth provider categories and in the outreach program categories, to come to those 2 targeted meetings where we're really going to be not doing as much presentation as this. The rest of those series really are around working meetings where we're going to dig into a topic and work on it together as a community. So it will be so critical to have outreach providers and youth providers at those working meetings as they come up. Thank you.
Kathy. Great, and I saw there, yes, it's Tuesday is January 25th, not Monday. So thank you for that, John. We will update that on the flyer before we send it out. And I wanted to turn back over to you, Chelsea, to close us out for the day. Thank you again, everyone, so much for being here with us.
Thank you. This was a lot of information to digest, but a lot of really good information in regards to our plan forward. We're hoping that you found today to be very informative. We're excited to see so many responses already in the chat in regards to commitments to engage. And so just want to, on behalf of the team and most importantly, on behalf of our community, thank you. And so thank you for joining us. Everyone stay safe. Please join us in our upcoming meetings. We will be sending out a lot of additional information. And thank you so much for your time.
Have a great day, everyone.
Take care.
Bye.